These old soldiers have just been back tracing the lines of the former trenches. Here at La Boutillerie, not far from Armentières, Colonel Scott Shepherd was then a young subaltern.
From here to here was no man's land, and my battalion, the 2nd Battalion of the Wiltshire Regiment, took turn with the Royal Scots Fusiliers in manning this ditch over some 6 weeks before Christmas in very wet weather. The ditch naturally filled, and it was difficult to keep a good parapet going in such conditions. But just a day or two before Christmas, the weather completely changed. It was dry and frosty, and it was naturally followed by very misty weather, rather like it is today.
Further north at Frelinghuysen, Colonel Johannes Nieman was a 2nd Lieutenant with the 133rd Saxon Regiment.
It was quite still, no shooting, a bit snow. And when we arrived trenches, we got in our dugout, the company leader, I, myself, the lieutenant, and 2 orderlies. And we placed a little Christmas tree lighted upon the breastwork, and we thought the Tommies had one also.
On Christmas Eve, we relieved the Scots Fusiliers, and we were amazed to find, all the reliefs of course took place at night, we were amazed to find that the Germans had put little lit candles on Christmas trees all along the line as far as we could see. And the chaps in the trenches along this line roughly, in a very Christmassy mood, just took pot shots at the lights they could see, and there was a real Christmas spirit going on.
Then we sang our old Christmas songs, Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht, and O du fröhliche, O you grace-bringing Christmas time. The Tommies cheered and sang their songs too. The long way to Tipperary, the long way to go, and home sweet home. And then it was still.
At dawn on Christmas morning, there was the usual stand to, of course, everybody manning their posts along this line. And as dawn came, the fog was so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of you, as they always say. Presently, the fog lifted very quickly. It lifted astoundingly quickly. And along that line, we were able suddenly to see the Germans doing exactly the same thing, all out in the open. And we just looked at each other for some time, and then 1 or 2 soldiers went towards them. They came across no man's land, and just about out there where that plough line is, from there to, what would one say, 100 yards from here, they met, they shook hands, they swapped cigarettes, they got talking, and well, everything, the war for that moment came to a standstill.
The next morning it was a bit foggy, firstly, and when we are taking our coffee and cake and in our dugout, then suddenly an orderly jumped in and cried, "The Tommies come on, and ours are also going upstairs."
Several of them spoke English. They were Saxons. They rather expressed their dislike for the Prussians and their dislike for the whole war, in fact. They weren't aggressive at all. Some of them said they had been to London, been to England, and in fact they gave every indication of being glad to meet us.
Suddenly a Tommy came with a football, kicking already and make fun And then began a football match. We marked our goals with our caps. Tommy's did also. And we had much kicking, and then, after all, the Germans won the football game with 3-2.
I think it was very moving because one had been looking at that part of the country as something dangerous to tread into unless it was quite dark. One got very cramped by keeping in cover all the time. But when to be able to walk about in it in daylight was quite a sensation, having treated it as something that you didn't tread on in daylight without expecting to get killed.
John Wilkins was then a stretcher bearer with the Wiltshires.
Well, it was a very funny feeling. It didn't seem right. See, when all you saw in the daylight was just a flat field, and then to come out and walk, it seemed so unreal to be able to walk in the middle of no man's land and not be shot at.
There was everywhere much fun. But the greatest fun, that was for our soldiers, the Scotch kilt. We had never seen soldiers with skirts. That was a great astonishment for us. And then the greatest was when the Scotch soldiers turned his round and lifted her back. And then we saw she had nothing underneath. That was the stuff to give the troops.
They talked about the reason for the war, and they didn't want the war, and they didn't want the fight, and generalities like that. Nothing really. There was no ill feeling, no bad feeling. Everybody was friendly. The only thing is, we didn't go near their trenches, and we wouldn't allow them to come near ours.
As the day wore on, there were some corpses about from the little battle we had down there on the right on December the 18th, and every effort was made to give these a decent burial.
The Germans brought all the Worcesters that had been killed on the 18th of December over from their trenches over towards the centre, and they handed them over to us. We took them back behind the trenches and buried them.
This unofficial and strange, quite weird truce went on for at least a week. But as time wore on, the more senior people way back, brigade, divisional and corps headquarters all gradually learned what was happening, and it was finally arranged that on New Year's Eve at 12 o'clock, everybody would be back in their places and the war would continue. I think the reason for this truce was entirely and only because it was Christmas and there was Christmas spirit in the air. It was the feeling that, like we have now, like we have for hundreds of years felt at Christmas time, everybody's friendly.
God rest you merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay, for Jesus Christ our Saviour was born on Christmas Day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.